Okay. So, good afternoon everybody. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. My name is Sunny from SEARCA. Welcome to another session of our Agriculture and Development Seminar Series, or ADSS. So, as many of you know, the SEARCA ADSS is a regular forum of exchange of ideas on agricultural and rural development, and it aims to contribute to a dynamic discussion and knowledge sharing within and beyond the Los Baños science community. So this learning event is the second ADSS in CIRCA's 12th five-year development plan for 2025 to 2030 under the overarching theme of Sustain Southeast Asia, or Sustainable Transformation of Agricultural Systems through Innovation in Southeast Asia. So thank you everybody for coming and for joining us. We have participants coming from as far as Quezon City from NFRDI. May I know who they are from NFRDI? Welcome po. Maraming salamat for coming. And we also have participants coming from, of course, UPLB, the School of Environmental Science and Management. I think they compose largely the audience, okay? And we also have other participants, students from different colleges of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. And we're also being joined by attendees from Facebook Live. So we're also being streamed via Facebook and also via Zoom. So we're grateful to everybody for joining us both on-site and online as we learn more efforts, tools, and frameworks such as the BlueESCAP for ocean sustainability in Southeast Asia. So how will this support public policy and what insights can we glean from its pilot implementation? So we'll find out in a short while. Without further ado, let me briefly introduce our resource speaker. Dr. Oscar Lecuyer is an environmental economist and researcher at the French Development Agency, or AFD. For the past 8 years, Dr. Oscar has helped design research projects focused on sustainability across various sectors. In his current role at AFD's Bangkok Regional Office, he is developing a toolkit for a sustainable ocean economy in Southeast Asia. And this research, focused on practical tools and co-constructed with partner institutions, aims to balance community development with social equity and marine protection. Dr. Oscar's current projects include mainstreaming inequality reduction in marine protected areas, assessing social safety nets in blue economy sectors, and establishing robust ocean sustainability metrics. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our ADSS speaker, Dr. Oscar Lecuyer.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me, or should I bend over a little bit? Can you hear me if I just stand like this? It's okay? Okay. Try to speak up a little bit. So please interrupt me if you don't hear me, or if you have any questions, by the way. So thank you for having me here. And where should I point for over there? Thank you for having me here and allowing me to talk about this topic, which I think is crucial for the region and also for the Philippines. Oh, yeah, okay. And my talk will have 3 main parts, which complement each other. And it's a bit long, so I may skip some of the slides, which are also here for reference purposes, so that you can also click on it to see some videos or access some of the publications. Thank you. Is it good like this? Is it working? Can you hear me? Is it working online as well? Yeah, thumbs up. We'll see. Okay. So I have to start with where I stand, where I come from. So a few slides about what AFD is as an institution and the research there. And an important part then about environmental sustainability and what we can gain from strong sustainability assessments when looking also at economic policies and economic problems. And one of the economic problems I want to address today is nature-related risk. So we'll see how far we can go on this section. And it's also where I'm going to introduce the SGAP framework that we've been developing for almost 8 years now at AFD. And that we are currently also piloting in the Philippines on a marine application, and this would be the last part. So I hope we can spend more time on the end of the presentation. So I'll do my best there. But please interrupt me nevertheless, okay? For any questions. I don't know where to point actually. To the projector. Where is it connected? Okay, so you are going to change the slides. Next one. Okay, so AFD is a French public institution for development aid, and it's actually a group with also public and civil society support, private sector focus, and also technical cooperation. And next one. And it's operating in many countries in the world, so more than 160. So it's a large bilateral organization, but small compared to multilateral donors such as ADB or World Bank, right? So it's kind of a smaller JICA, so to say. Next one. And it works with many different tools and products. So financial products such as loans to governments, grants, but also private sectors such as guarantees and capital investment, and also technical support to grants, and most importantly for this talk, also research and innovation. And that's where I belong at AFD. Next one. Next one. So research at AFD works for the countries and with the countries to strengthen collaborations with research institutions and researchers, to provide insights from research for public policies, right? So we work on academic publications, but also technical papers, but also action and policy-oriented products, so short policy briefs, and also collaborative workshops and platforms for engaging in discussions and dialogue around this research and the applications. And this is, I think, also very relevant in the topic today. We'll see why. Next one. Working now. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I can start the presentation. So research at AFD is not in all the countries and not on all the topics. It follows mainly the mandate of AFD, which is sustainable development. So what's what we call here planet, so more than half of it. But we also work on macroeconomic topics and social development and human development topics, inequalities, employment, crisis and conflicts, etc. And we also have an engagement at the global level on dialogues with the with the banking sectors on banking regulation and financial institutions, and that also touches upon the talk today. Next one. And so this is all the products that you can look upon on AFD's website. Many different types of products on all the geographies of AFD and also Southeast Asia. And we have several active research projects, well, actually 2 active research projects in the Philippines right now, and maybe 20 or 30 or so in the region, Southeast Asia. Next one. Okay, so the talk today is about environmental sustainability. I'm sure you all have an idea about what that could mean for you. Next one. But really the starting point of this talk is the shared constatation, the shared assessment from all the different scientists, that the state of the planet is really alarming, right? So this is just a small set of international peer-reviewed publications with thousands and thousands of researchers that agree on one diagnostic. Next one, which is that biodiversity is declining at an unprecedented rate, right? So the populations are declining, the structures and the functions of ecosystems are also declining. So this is coming from the previous mentioned publications. And it's especially difficult to understand and to act upon on biodiversity because, still not working, next one. Biodiversity is a complex system. This one's working. biodiversity being a complex system, you have non-linear dynamics that can lead to collapse, right? So even if you think it's stable or slowly declining, suddenly you can have a very important change and a change of state, and it's very costly to come back. The coming back is non-linear. And an example, for instance, is a fish stock collapse that happened before for cod, for instance, and etc. And so this thinking is important for all the components of environmental sustainability, because it's all interconnected and complex. I think the computer is too far, no? It's here, okay. You sure? Coming back? Okay, so that's the next one, okay. Can you go back to the previous one, sorry? Okay, so, and this non-linear response is at all the different scales, right? Next one. At the scale of the ecosystem, but also at the planetary scale. So maybe you're aware of this planetary boundaries approach, which had a huge impact on people who realized that the Earth is actually a closed system, and that many systems depend on each other and are not guaranteed, right? The stability is not guaranteed. They depend also on our actions. And with regard to biodiversity, we already shooted out the safe operating space here by a long shot, right? And 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries that we already identified are considered transgressed. Next one. So where does it come from? So we know the diagnostic is clear. It's all related to really rapidly increasing anthropic drivers, indirect drivers from economic activity or activities on Earth, and direct drivers, which I come back to, which are related to land use change, overexploitation, pollution, and climate change, and invasive species. So those are the 5 that IPBES puts forward first. And the reports here, another series of examples of declines in nature. I won't delve too much on it, but I think you get the picture. Next one. Okay, so we need a system to understand how to cope with that, to understand how it affects us, and also to understand the solutions towards reversing this trend, right? So one very useful framework for this is the framework of ecosystem services. So ecosystem services are of different types. You have the provisioning services, next one, regulation and maintenance services, and cultural services. So you have different kind of services. Those are contributions by nature that we think are natural, so that we don't think much on, but that are actually there for free, forever, etc. But they actually depend on underlying what we could call ecological functions, right? Which are processes, physical, chemical, biological, that are actually underlying the furniture of those services. Just to give some examples, provisioning services, what do you call provisioning services? So, for instance, biomass furniture, right? So fishes, wood, but also water, energy coming from biomass or for animals, and some important regulation services are the ability to sustain life on Earth, and also the ability to have a stable climate over time, over longer periods, is also important for our livelihoods and our welfare. Next one. And so those ecosystem services interact in many different ways with our society, economy, etc. So this is dating back from 2005, the first effort toward this, called the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, where you see actually it's a small set here of ecosystem services. So the dependencies of the relation, the number of ecosystem services we rely upon was actually underestimated here by a lot, right? You don't have biodiversity, you don't have climate change, you don't have all that's associated to those the stability of our environment, right? Next one. And so you can't see this picture very well, but this is, in my opinion, a more useful way to see those interactions and to see the interconnections between nature and our society and economy. It flows, so to say, from biophysical structure, which would be here the box that enveloped them all, and towards services. So the ecosystem services would be here on the benefit end, right? Very close to anthropic considerations, so to our activities. And you can consider them one by one, etc., right? It's tailored to fit into our models for exploitation, etc. And the actually underlying processes need a more holistic perspective. You need to understand the interconnectedness of the different systems. And so this is what we're going to be interested in, how to take into account this information for our understanding the impacts and the effects on our livelihoods, economies. Next one. And a useful framework to do that is the framework of strong environmental sustainability. And it's, in this talk, it's a prerequisite to understand how to model the impacts on the economy, right? So you have basically two worldviews. I think we can say it like this. Next one. The first one is, okay, so the translation was a bit hazardous, but weak, we could call it weak sustainability, so to say. It's not necessarily a negative way to see things, but it's a worldview that says that you can actually substitute one type of capital for another. This is actually what underpins the sustainable development paradigm, right? Développement durable from the Brundtland report, right? Where you have society, economy, and environment, and they're all interconnected. But still, you can invest in your human capital, you can invest in your social capital, and exploit in doing this your environmental capital, and you're still better off in the end because you can substitute one for another, right? This is a view where it's actually your total capital that counts, and you look at it in monetary terms, right? Because it's very practical. So how can you compare countries if not through GDP, right? But then you have a different worldview, a competing one with regards to sustainability. Next one, which we could call strong sustainability. And this one stipulates that the economy is actually embedded in the environment, and that you cannot think of the environment, you cannot think of the environment as one sector of the economy, right? You have to take seriously all the flows in and out of the economy, and in physical terms. And this means that since in physical terms, the dimensions are different, and you cannot substitute one for another. And within the environment, on top of that, within the environment, you also have components that are more important than others, that can be seen as critical, that nobody would like to see disappearing, right? So if you take climate change, for instance, nobody wants to see stability of climate disappear. So we're all acting towards making that possible, right? And actually, it's not the only one. You have a whole series of critical components, and we'll come back to it. And I'm arguing in this talk that it's more useful to have this framework of strong sustainability to assess the impacts of environmental changes on the economy. Because when you monetize the flows from and to the economy, you're losing a lot of information about what's happening in the underlying processes, and I come back to it. And you cannot have any information about the dynamics of it, and then you're surprised by the collapse, right? But the value of oil is rising, right? But then suddenly it's empty, and it was rising because actually people wanted more and more of it, and the extractions is also increasing, right? So you want also to monitor the actual stock, and you want to also have a strategy of using it with respect to its renewal in time, and this is more in line with a strong sustainability approach. Next one. And so there are some principles that we thought of with colleagues to make this operational. And the first one I thought about is non-substitutability, right? So it doesn't mean that you should never assess the value of anything in nature. It's just that it's not a priori necessary, right? You should first try to look at things physically, and you should also first try to look at things in a multidimensional way, right? And the arbitrage should be made when useful, right? So markets are still necessary. You need markets, but markets are here for short-term arbitrage, right? So how to allocate resources depending on short-term trends, and prices are not informative of scarcity over the long term regarding environmental resources. And finally, and maybe the most important regarding this talk, what we call social construct, which is, by lack of a better term, it's a recognition of actually the political side of it, right? So you need to have a common understanding, and it's a real difficult construction, a long process. You need a common understanding of what is at stake and what you wish to maintain. So sustainability about what, right? Next one. Okay, so now moving to nature-related risk. With this in mind, I'm going to propose a framework to look at the interconnectedness of nature and the economy. And to do this, I'm going to rely on work done by colleagues. Next one. So nice pictures here. So any wrong interpretation will be mine, right? So I'm going to dodge any questions regarding their work, and I'll do my best to actually talk about what I think is important regarding this talk, right? Next one. So, oh yeah, so there are animations, sorry about that. So maybe you can try to go forward until everything appears. Okay, so AFD is a bank, right? And so we also embedded in this discussion about financial liability and the responsibility of the financial sector regarding its relation to nature, right? And there is an increasing awareness about this, and many financial institutions are coming together to propose a regulation agenda around this. And so this is just a subset of all the papers that were done. Next one. Next one. And this is the framework I'm proposing to you today. It's you have in blue here, you have nature, so to say, and right in green you have the economy, and then you have financial institutions, right? So the risk is really critical for the financial institutions, but I won't go into details of that today. I want to dig a bit into this yellow box here, right? So you have the relationship with the environment goes two-way. First, you depend on the environment for your processes and your economic activity. So when you locate a factory along the shore, you depend on the stability and the protection of the shore, right? Otherwise, after the next hurricane or cyclone, you have to rebuild your factory, right? So you depend on a whole series of external factors, right, which are related to the to underlying natural processes that you would like to understand. But it goes the other way around as well. Your activities impact the environment, right? So you want to understand both, right? As a company, as a chef d'entreprise, so as the company head, right? As the CEO, you want to understand what part of your bottom line actually critically depends on nature surrounding your whole supply chain, your whole assets, right? And as a citizen or the government, which have to manage natural resources, you want to understand also the impacts of all this activity on your surrounding environment, because see, it's connected. And this is important for everyone, right? And it's important also for many, many socio-economic metrics and outcomes. And when you look at, for instance, crisis, you wonder where it's coming from, right? And sometimes it's just that the underlying stability of the system that allowed it is changing, right? Sometimes you have you want to look at your external debt, you want to look at your fiscal balance, you want to look at your employment assets, etc. And you want to organize your transition towards less impact by managing also changes of all those socio-economic drivers. Next one. And the risk agenda around this is just a fancy nomenclature or jargon around this, right? So for the financial institutions, dependency here is what they call physical shocks, right? And it's going to drive a physical risk agenda where you want to look at acute shocks, chronic shocks. So here there are two examples that can be telling. Deforestation can trigger the emergence of zoonotic diseases, and there is a subsequent pandemics, right, which affects everyone. But you also have chronic shocks, right? So prolonged use of pesticides causing a gradual decline in pollinator populations, reduced soil fertility, decreased agricultural yields. You also have those long-term effects that you want to understand. And in this financial institutions jargon, you also have an interest in this other way around. Even if it doesn't affect the bottom line directly, it has a huge indirect impact. So you want to look at it. And this indirect impact is labeled transition shocks. And you look at the transition risk, where it's changes in policy, consumer preferences, or technologies that drive changes indirectly that loop back to the economy. And you also want to understand those. So here, examples: changes in agricultural subsidies impact farmers in a region, or imposing rules on imported deforestations can limit businesses' abilities to expand if they have a huge deforestation footprint. So all those are made the headlines, and they're important external factors for businesses as well. And this is under the transition risk agenda. Next one. Okay, so you have all the components of risk here, right? You have the likelihood of shocks, so understanding the underlying dynamics in nature that can drive the emergence of shocks. You have the exposure, which is the structure of the economy and how it's connected to this to nature. And then you have all the adaptation strategy, which are how the economy will work out all those shocks towards minimizing their impacts on the final socioeconomic variables, right? Next one. Next one, I won't go too much into the details of this risk agenda. Next one. But I just explain a little bit, unpack a little bit the black box behind it, just to explain what is possible and to explain a bit the research that has been done before, so as to inspire also researchers in these institutions here, and also because I think it's a very rapidly increasing agenda, which is going to affect also the Philippines in the short term. Next one. So we look at this first driver here, this first pathway, so the dependency pathway. Next one. And this is actually, remember this first picture here of ecosystem services. So this is what it's about, right? So we're refining this mess of arrows into a workable structure of models. Next one. So this is, believe me, this is less complex, right? You have here a model of the economy, right? Remember the economy? So this is actually a representation, simplified representation of the input-output tables that every country produces that show the interconnectedness of the economy, right? So you have, it shows all the inputs and outputs of every sector with respect to every other sector, to put it very simply. And so this is a representation of all the value chains, right? So in it, you have, for each sector, you have implicitly all the processes, all the technologies that they use. And there are tools that say which ecosystem services each of these technology needs, right? This is ongoing, right? We don't understand it all yet, but we have enough data to make rough assessments of the dependency of specific sectors to specific ecosystem services, right? Depending on where they are, so the country, the ecosystem type, and the sector. And then you can plug in an extended model or a macroeconomic model to actually compute the different socioeconomic metrics that you're interested in the end. So this is possible, right? So you can work out the impact or the consequences on your economy, on the metrics that of interest for policymakers, for citizens, of changes in the environment. But right now we're stuck with ecosystem services. And remember, they're quite far to the right in the flow of nature to society. What we would like to understand is actually the stability, the sustainability, right? And this is what the SEARCA dashboard is intending to do, and we'll come back to it. Next one. So I go very fast on this. This is work being done by colleagues on South Africa. So you have the references in the talk, in the slides that I will share. It's just an example of the direct dependence of those socioeconomic variables I told about on specific ecosystem services. So for the example of South Africa, net exports, 80% of net exports are directly dependent on surface water provision, right? So water provision is actually very crucial for exports in South Africa, right? And employment is by 35% dependent on flood and storm protection, right? So a third of employment is critically dependent on the provision of the service. So we want to understand where and how and why. And more than 50% of final demand depends on that as well, right? So you have here a first matrix to understand this direct dependence. And then if you work out all the supply chains and the interactions within the economy, next one, you also have the indirect dependence. Yes, just what I said. So next one. You can also look at the indirect dependence, right? And then 100% of the economy is basically indirectly dependent on most of ecosystem services, actually. And then you can use that information to compute actually vulnerability indexes and stress indexes. Next one. Okay, so just a short presentation of the reverse. Next one. Remember this dashboard here, this figure here? It's the main drivers of global changes on biodiversity, right? Biodiversity decline. So drivers are land use, overexploitation, climate change, pollution, invasive species, etc. There are others. And next one. Most of them are actually underestimated. So you want to have a better estimation and understanding of those pressures. And this means understanding where and how those pressures actually work out. Next one. And so this is the same system, same diagram, but reversed, right? So you start here with the economy. You want to compute the economy, and then you want to have a way. So there is a model that can connect the different sectors with the pressure on the environment along the five main pressures I mentioned before, right? And then using the star system from the IUCN, you can work out the threats to species from those pressures. So depending on where it is, the type of ecosystem, and depending on type of pressure, you have more or less pressure on species, right? And this helps to work out impacts. And the transition risks occurs when there are policies that try to reduce pressures. And so you can here model the impact on your economy of those policies, right? And this would be this pathway towards the socioeconomic variables. Next one. And so they did this for, next one. This is another study on South Africa that developed this methodology. And they looked at the share of sectors that are in areas where ecosystem services are threatened. Here it says that 80% of coal mining activity is located in municipalities with ecosystems that are critically threatened by mines. So this is a huge risk of a transition risk, because if the government were to take action, if citizens were to actually realize this and take action, this would be have a huge impact on the capacity of coal mining businesses to actually operate, right? Next one. So this is for reference. I refer to this work, which is really interesting, and more is coming next year. Next one. To move to the core of this talk, which is about the SEARCA methodology. Next. Okay, so I want to focus here on this part of the graph. We want to understand how all this dependency relates to the underlying processes and structure of nature. Next one. So those are the foundation of this SEARCA framework, and they are compatible with the strong sustainability principles that I presented before. What's aggregated is just gaps. You can always refer to this dashboard. So it's multidimensional. It's covering a maximum, or how to say, it's trying to have a holistic approach to this environmental sustainability problem. Next one. And it's linked to scientifically based targets, science-based targets. So this is what the SEARCA is about. If you take an example, so one component of nature capital. So let's say this is a fishery. You know how to measure the state of your fishery, right? You can look at, let's say you look at the fish mass, right? Biomass. You're able to measure biomass here, and you know you can follow here in time the state of this fishery, and you know when it's going to be extinct, right? But you don't. This is not very well contextualized. Next one. You don't know if you're far from it. You don't know if it's good, if it's bad, if it's high or if it's low. So the SEARCA approach, next one, introduces a reference level, next, which is a sort of norm of good ecological condition, a sort of standard of sustainability. So for the fish stocks, the example would be the maximum sustainable yield, right? You know that if the fishing pressure stays below the maximum sustainable yield, your fish stock will maintain over time. So of course you can refine this model, but let's stick with it for now. So if you do this, suddenly you have a point of comparison, right? And so you can compare the current situation with this reference level. And this, in the SEARCA framework, allows to compute what we call the SES index, for Strong Environmental Sustainability Index, which runs from 0 to 100. If you're 100, you're safe. If you're 0, you're doomed. And in between, you want to monitor over time the evolution of this component of sustainability. So instead of being an expert on fisheries and monitor over time the quantity of fish in the seas, you can just look how far you're from 100, right? If in the Philippines we're 80% of sustainability, meaning that 80% of the fish stocks in the country are in a good condition, harvested below maximum sustainable yield, it's pretty good, right? It's not 100, but you know that those 20%, this is a smaller gap to close than if you're 10, right? Next one. So you want to actually close the gap here. So you want the trend to move upwards. Next one. And if you can follow, if you have enough data to follow in time the situation, you can, this indicator also has nice statistical properties. You can also look at trends. And you can also compare trends with sustainable trends and communicate on the trends. And you want the trends also to, I leave out the details here, but you can also monitor the trends, and you want the trends to be as close as possible to 100, which would be the sustainable trend. Next one. Yeah, so this is the one equation of this talk for the scientists in the room, for the ecological scientists in the room. So this is actually a goalpost method, right, with science-based standards. So you want to have I, which is your indicator, and you're comparing it to this maximum, which is the sustainability level, and the minimum to have a metric, an indicator that moves from 0 to 100. Next one. So you normalize it, right? So this is the same. And another equation here, this is how you compare the trends to have also a nicely behaving indicator of trends. So this has been computed for Europe, European countries, for all the components of terrestrial environmental sustainability. And I come back to it next. So here is an example, right? So this is the original proposition for the SCAP. It relies on 4 main contributions from natural capital. The provision of resources, biomass, so this is fish, wood, the provision of fresh water, the provision of soil, and then very important contributions from nature that are often overlooked is the capacity of natural systems to actually cope with pollution. And this is usually a given, right? So people think it's obvious, but actually no, there are thresholds beyond which soils cannot manage, right? They stay toxic. Water becomes unbaseable, undrinkable, unlivable, etc. And you want to do this for all the pollutants, right? And so we saw that one of the planetary boundaries was the emergence of new compounds, right? So we lack here a sort of precautionary principle to understand those thresholds before putting everything on the market, but that's another topic. Some of those pollutions we know about, right? We can monitor and we can compare to those threshold levels. And you want to do this in all the different ecosystems. And then another important contributions from natural capital, a critical component is the capacity to support life. And so this is an aggregate metric here of ecosystem health for terrestrial, freshwater, and marine ecosystems. And this is ongoing research, right? There is still no consensus or no one way to actually measure the health of ecosystems. And of biodiversity, you want to look at all the different levels of biodiversity, right? The ecosystem, the species, the genes, etc. So you want to look also at the functional biodiversity or the extent or the connectivity. So you have many different ways to approach this. It depends on the area, on the country, etc. So still, you want to have one robust way to measure it and to compare it to this reference levels, to the desired level. So, for instance, no more than 20% of degraded areas. When you look at the MSY, I don't know if you know the MSY, the sort of normalized degradation of biodiversity. And then you have other components in this original approach that were proposed around human health and also amenities, right? Such as heritage sites for which you have actually good data, natural heritage sites. Next one. And so this is just to finish this example. This is data coming from the European countries. So this is also coming from the original ESCAP work. On the different lines here, you have the different, an intermediate aggregation of all the different components, right? So here, 7 critical components from natural capital, right? And on the columns here, you have all the countries in Europe. And its data is being harmonized between countries in Europe, so you can compare countries, which is another nice features of this work at the regional level. And you can see here, you can compare the state with the dynamic. So biodiversity is not so good and is worsening. And pollution is not so good and is worsening as well. And global processes, so climate change is very bad. But it's improving in some places, at least in Europe, right? Next one. Next one. Next. Okay, so now I introduced the framework. Now let's look into an application for the oceans and applications in Southeast Asia and then also in the Philippines. So this is just a few metrics on the oceans. I don't know how many of you actually work on marine ecosystems and on oceans. Can I do a survey, a quick survey here? How many people are actually engaged in work on oceans? Some of you? At least some, okay. Thank you. It's actually real critical environment in Southeast Asia. It connects all the countries. And in Southeast Asia, you have huge stakes, right, on plastic pollutions, for instance, where 6 of the world's top 20 polluters are located in Southeast Asia. Most of the population is actually exposed to increasing climate impacts coming from the oceans. And it hosts, Southeast Asia hosts some of the most significant marine ecosystems of the world, right? With almost a quarter of seagrass beds, more than a third of the world mangroves, etc. Next. And then there's also a huge economic significance with 90% of international trade transiting through Southeast Asia and tourism being one of the major sectors and also major increasing sectors in the Southeast Asia economies. And of course also aquaculture production, fishery captures, which is so important in the economies, but also for social aspects, nutrition, livelihoods of the poorest populations in most of the countries in the region. Next one. So you want to have a very close look at what's happening in the oceans. And of course, it's more difficult than on land. Oceans are invisible, they're moving, and they're very deep. But still, you want to know what's happening there. And you want to move towards what we call a blue economy. So what's a blue economy? So that's what, in the end, we're interested about when you look at this framework I've been presented about connecting nature with the economy, right? You want to understand the impacts on the economy of major changes in your marine environment. And for that, you need to understand what's your blue economy. So there are more than 70 definitions, and depending on the point of view and on the problem, if you look at the impacts or dependencies or the plans for development, etc., you want to look at more or less excluded sectors, right? Next one. Okay, so now I'm moving to work being done by a team here at Los Baños, led by Rico here in Los Baños, but also in collaborations with researchers in France and researchers in Indonesia. And sorry, just one second. Next one. So this is a team, more nice pictures. You can see Rico here. This is a real nice picture of Rico. And I noticed that some pictures are missing, right? So of course we need to update this slide with the full team here at Los Baños. Sorry about that. And all the nice logos here. Next one. So diving directly into the core of the work, preliminary work allowed to select 22 indicators, which are organized in the same structures than I presented before, so I won't repeat. But it's focused on marine ecosystems adapted for the region and for Southeast Asia, right? So you have mangroves, corals, seagrass, illegal catch, invasive species, and a lot of different pollutions also that are very relevant in the region, including also plastic pollution. And then you have all the supply, the resource use of the oceans, right? So all the stocks and fisheries. Next one. And so a workshop was conducted in the Philippines with all those institutions here in April this year that allowed to refine this work. Next one. This preliminary analysis by looking at what's relevant for the Philippines, what's feasible, what's available, and also very importantly, where do we have both the data, but also the reference level that is sufficiently agreed upon to be usable in this context. Next one. And so we ended up with 7 indicators, right? 4 here on more patrimonial aspects of marine environments, so where data is easier to find and to collect, and also it's less contentious, and almost nothing on pollution and biodiversity, where data is both more difficult and more expensive to collect, more contentious, and less of a priority also for a whole set of different stakeholders, right, in the whole region. Still, we have 7 indicators. So fish stocks, marine, chemical pollution in marine water bodies, plastic pollution, standards of health with reference to water, and heritage sites. Next one. And so can you see something? Yeah, okay. For the Philippines. So you have here the 7 indicators ranging from a 0 to 100. So here on the top left is the scale. 0, you're doomed, but you're fine. So for the fish stocks, it's 100 because it relies on data coming from the Indian Ocean Commission. So it's a wrong source of data, right? From what I heard, if you look at Filipino data, it should be a bit less. Some of the sites, some of the fisheries are actually not fished at a sustainable yield. You start to see signs of overfishing and decline in fisheries. Here, the chemical status of water bodies is at 77%. Plastic pollution on beach litter is actually going very well and going up, is on a sustainable trajectory, towards sustainable trajectory. So we might want to look a bit more in the details of that as well. And here data shows that only 50% of coral reefs are in fair or good status in the country. So you might want to actually look at this trend and understand what could reverse or close the gap. And then here, regarding recreational water bodies, UNESCO sites, water bodies are really polluted. UNESCO sites are so-so, and Ramsar sites are okay. So this is just an entry point, right? You want to look, it gives a global picture of sustainability issues in the country regarding all the data available. It can be used at a glance, but it's a point of entry. Then you want to look more in the details of what this data means, component by component, right? Next one. So you might be interested in what's been done in Indonesia. So since then, so this is ongoing work, right? So this may not be completely up to date. but the fish stocks are less well. Coral reefs are a bit better, and marine water bodies are faring better. So they're working on understanding the robustness of this data. So look, they're doing uncertainty analysis on this data in Indonesia. So it might be interesting to compare this work also with the Philippines. Next. So next is more detail for each of the 7 components indicators that inform this dashboard, BlueESCAP dashboard in the Philippines. So we may come back to it if you have questions. So can you go next for 5 or 6 times? Next, 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 next. Nice pictures. Next. Stop. To my conclusion slide. So there are many applications for this BlueESCAP. So remember the diagram I showed you before? This is the crucial data that is underlying all the definition of environmental sustainability of your economy, right? So we want to be able to know about this. And applications are many, so you can use it at a strategic level to monitor your environment from very far, right? From let's say you see it in Manila. But you can also use it for reporting purposes. So it's a small set of critical indicators for reporting on biodiversity. So it can be used within the GBF framework, for instance. But you can also use it in specific processes, right? It could be used also at regional level or at a subnational level for strategic planning or zoning. It could be used also for identifying the missing metrics, right? For strategic development of the monitoring frameworks, such as now in the PENCAS law. And then it can be plugged on economic models to look at risk assessments. It can be plugged to social models to look at social dependency assessments as well, economic dependency assessment. And finally, it can be plugged into financial models for going at scale for the use of environmental data, right? So just a final note on the finance sector. In the finance sector, everything is about scale. And this is one essential brick when if you want to go at scale on environmental data, right? You want to not go at scale only with monetary valuation of the environment. You want to go at scale with also meaningful and relevant data about the state of your environment. And this is what the BlueESCAP is advocating for this. And I'll end here. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Oscar, for your presentation. So probably the first few slides were a great refresher for your NVISI courses at SESAM. And those were very interesting initial results of your pilot test in Indonesia and the Philippines, right? Okay, so we're gonna open the floor for an open forum. So anyone who would like to ask a question about the framework or about their experience in piloting the framework in Indonesia and the Philippines. Anyone who asks will be given a special gift from SEARCA. We have a magic pen. A magic pen from SEARCA. So anyone who would like to ask a question from SESAM, NFRDI, SEM? Huwag na po kayo mahiya. Okay, so while you're thinking about the question, we have actually a pre-registration question from the audience. So listen, guys. So one of the questions from our online attendees, how does the BlueESCAP framework ensure that policies informed by its metrics do not favor large-scale corporate-led blue economy projects at the expense of marginalized coastal communities, particularly small-scale fishers?
Okay, so what I did not touch upon here is the social aspect of the blue economy, right? So actually, there are several ways to answer this. First one is to maybe to understand where your data come from, right? Your environmental data needs to inform on the state of the environment everywhere, not just on your priority development side for ecotourism, right? also at community level, also in all the ecosystems where large populations depend upon, right, or live in. So that's the first answer. And if you know about this, if you know also the dependency of all those livelihoods in the area upon those the ecosystem services, maybe this is another way to prevent green grabbing, right? Because then the loss is visible. And it's not economic loss, right? It's welfare loss. It's not visible. You cannot compute it with economic value. But you can look at the provision of ecosystem services. And if you have an understanding of the ecology, or maybe you can say social ecology of the area, you can act upon it. And another answer of this is, I didn't talk about it, but this BlueESCAP dashboard and ESCAP dashboard is actually compatible with the SEEA. The SEEA is an accounting norm from the UN that has been agreed upon quite recently, actually, to allow statistical authorities to actually work on environmental data, environmental accounts. So to put it really simply, right, the ESCAP is a proposition of an aggregate indicator that puts this data, the statistical data of the environment, into perspective for answering one specific question, which is what is the environmental sustainability of this place, of this country? And these questions today, nobody can answer it. And if you take the introduction seriously, this is a real problem, and it's going to be in the short term, right? Because we're going to see the impact. And so it's connected to this environmental accounting agenda, right? And also scientific agenda. And one sub-agenda among this is ocean accounting. And in ocean accounting, researchers are trying to connect the visions of the oceans, marine activities, from the perspective of the economy, of fiscal services, of statistical services, satellite accounts, etc., with the vision of marine activities coming from a social perspective. So informal activities, rural populations, and coming from an environmental perspective, right? So locations, coastal, whether the impact, the pressures come from. And within this framework, you can connect the efforts here in the BlueESCAP, which could be sub-accounts in this ocean accounting perspective, with social accounts, right? And there you can work also on the connections of this, right?
All right, well said, Dr. Oscar. Thank you. So nakapag-isip na po ba kayo ng itatanong? Anyone from the group who would like to ask a question for Dr. Oscar? Si Sir, may question siya last time. Anyone from the group? Any lingering questions from the...
Who's missing a pen?
Yes, for the pen. Yes, sir.
Hi. You have to forgive my questions because I came in late, but I really wanted to hear your talk. So I guess my question would be in your last few slides where you showed some of the parameters like fisheries and coral reefs, because those are my interests. Can you please explain what 100% means for fisheries and 50% for coral reefs?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the BlueESCAP dashboard is a way to convey information in an aggregate way, right? In a synthetic way. So you may want to look at one specific pressure in terms of intensity or acuteness, or in terms of coverage, right? Or in an extensive way. So to put it differently, you can look at the how bad are the corals faring in a country, or you can look at how many places are bad, right? So it's a bit technical, but what this 50% says here is that 50% of the surveyed sites, so of the reefs, are in a fair, good or excellent condition. So you want to reach 100, right? So this is what this means. So it depends on how you assess fair good or excellent conditions in corals, right? So you want to have a harmonized methodology for this in all the sites. And you want this to be really informative of the actual health of ecosystems in coral reefs, right?
All right.
In a way, it's an aggregate indicator, right, already. It's a aggregate health index.
Thank you, sir, for the question. Anyone else? Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Emmy Mendoza from the College of Human Ecology. I was looking at the indicators that you presented, and understandably, this is environmental sustainability, so most of the metrics, the indicators there are really ecological and primarily biological. But I'm not just so sure if it was removed, the dependency on fish as a food source, no? And there's another one, the recreational part, the cultural part that brings in the social and the possibility of socio-based indicators not to be incorporated. Is there a possibility of more social-based indicators getting into this index? No? That's my question.
So this sustainability gap approach is quite appealing, right? It's a powerful way to convey information. And you can think easily of reference levels for economic sustainability. You come up with difficulty with reference levels for environmental sustainability because the science is not always there. And it's impossible to come up with reference levels for social sustainability. There is no consensus in my experience on social metrics that you would like to achieve, right? Maybe they could be on nutrition actually, so health issues maybe, you know. But for inequality, for poverty, nobody agrees on what should be the level, right? Should it be zero, you know? So that's not a science-based target. So since we had to define some principles to devise this dashboard, we could not move towards also a social gap metric indicator or dashboard. But of course, issues are also connected. So you could look at important social aspects through the lens of ecosystem service provision, right, and the state of environment in specific places. But with regard to the specific indicator you mentioned, I was not present in the atelier, in the workshop last April. So we'll have to turn to colleagues present to ask them what was discussed about those indicators. But if they were dropped out, it's probably because they were assessed as less relevant with respect to environmental sustainability. That's probable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any final question from the group? Yes, ma'am.
Next week, we will be updating the INIPAS Act. This is the law that governs our protected areas in the Philippines. What do you think would be our entry points? I know that it's still a long way that we can mainstream BlueESCAP, but what are our entry points to pilot this? That could also help with the missing indicators that you had that would probably help in mainstreaming this in the future. And to increase, of course, more investments from your from your office or organizations to the Philippines.
Well, also ADB and others, and it's an international effort. Yeah. So thank you for your very practical question. So actually, with the BlueESCAP, we are 2 steps ahead. So I think the primary purpose could be of advocacy or inspiration, right, of where we should head for. So some sort of prospective work also on the reference levels, so we can discuss together about the reference levels. So remember the first slide about the social construct, right? So this is it, right? maybe there can be a discussion, social discussion about what is the environment we would like to have in the future. That's the first thing. So that would be for NGOs, think tanks, or public debate, right? And on very practical note, there are two specific entry points where the BlueESCAP can help in the short term for the PENCAS. The first one is by giving a clear recommendation, scientifically based recommendation on the list of indicators that should be included in the knowledge information system of the DNR, first thing. If one is missing, it's a problem for monitoring environment as a whole. So there should be a vision of where this information system is headed, right? And this should inform this vision. It doesn't mean that each one of them should be short-term, right? So there is, of course, you need the resources for monitoring all those indicators, right? You need the protocols. You need you need the technologies for looking at the pollution levels. So this is difficult, like chemical pollution, etc. Still, it's important to have this vision and this plan to move towards that, right? Otherwise, it's never going to be there. And the second entry point is actually at the statistical level. Right now, Indonesia also, but Philippines. Indonesia is actually one step ahead compared to Philippines on that. Doesn't have a comprehensive definition of ocean-based activities at a statistical level. So another very concrete entry point would be a contribution, a discussion with DNR, with PSA, on where the satellite accounts on ocean activities should be headed. And this could be informed by international discussions about ocean accounting.
Thank you, ma'am. Ultimate question.
Last question was just curious. I think in one of your slides, you showed Philippines as the highest marine plastic pollution, but it looks like your indicators are all above and close to the to the 100%. So I could not really see how.
So you got me there. I don't know. I didn't look at the data and where it comes from. We can look actually at the slide. I think there is a source for data, and it should be a better source of data.
Yes, I think so. I could not believe it. 35% as against the other countries where it's just one-digit number. But then all of the indicators that you were showing, it's like we are in the pink of health in terms of of our.
Yeah, plastic pollution is tricky in the Philippines, right? Because they have all those very short freshwater systems that go directly to the ocean, right? So it's very difficult to actually monitor all of them and to catch all the plastics. So I agree, we should have a better way to monitor that, and I don't know.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. And Dr. Oscar, that concludes our open forum. Would also like to hear a few insights from you. So this is the quiz part of the seminar. So kindly fill out the feedback form. So we have kindly scan the QR code for our feedback form. Tell us about your insights or any lingering questions that you would like to ask our speaker. We can send it to him via email so he can respond to you as well. And I believe if with your permission, we can share a copy of your presentation. Or...
Yes, so I'm going to transform it in PDF so that it's easier to share, right? And it's so big.
Yes, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can access the PDF copy of the presentation via our website, or if you also pre-registered, you will also be sent a copy of the presentation. Okay, so thank you everybody. So while you're filling out the feedback form, I'd like to invite our Center Director, Dr. Mercedita Zumbilya, to give the Certificate of Appreciation to our resource speaker. So this Certificate of Appreciation is given to Dr. Oscar Lecuyer for sharing his expertise as a speaker during the EDSS titled Ocean Sustainability in Southeast Asia, Piloting the Blue Environmental Sustainability Gap, held on 12 September 2025 at SEARCA, Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines, signed by our Center Director. also like to invite, of course, the Special Assistant to the Director, Dr. Rico Angkog. Okay, so can we also have a group photo with the audience? Maybe they can just sit over here. So please show us your biggest smile. Okay. Okay, so that ends our seminar this afternoon. So we have another upcoming ADSS to be held on September 24th. So please watch out for the announcement. Do we have the poster? Okay, so we have one featuring Miss Maria Cristina Season talking about one of the papers of the 20th anniversary issue of the Asian Journal for Agriculture and Development, or AJAD. So that's going to happen on September 24th. So also here at SEARCA. So you can also pre-register and you will be notified with regards to the further details of the seminar. So there you go. So the topic is youth engagement in transforming the food system to address malnutrition in the Philippines. Again, that's on September 24th, also at 3 p.m. Wednesday in the same room. So if you want to learn more and have some pens from SEARCA, so please join us again on September 24. You can pre-register, you can scan it, but we will also announce this on Facebook later today. Okay? So that concludes our seminar. Maraming salamat po. Thank you everybody, and thank you to our resource speaker. Some refreshments are available at the back of the room, so please grab some food for everybody. Thank you.